So we had a partnership with our local Chamber of Commerce called E Squared that really talked about workforce ready skills and what did we want kids to be in the community. And that helped frame what became our vision for personalized learning. And we kind of institutionalized that in the Parthenon graphic that you see there. Really, again, that whole capstone focuses on being college, career, and life ready. And for Henry County, it's really important to talk about being life ready. College and career is one thing that we know we have an obligation to do, but we also want kids to be able to be the kind of folks you want to have move into the house next door to you and be your neighbor. And so we think about those things as valuable as we go. We start in our district with a strong sense of school autonomy. We think each one of our 50 schools is a different community, and they have different leaders, and they have different teachers, and they have different parents. And so their needs and their wants are going to be slightly different. And instead of trying to force everybody to be standardized, if we think personalized learning for each individual student is important, then it should also kind of mirror that as we work our way up the organization. So we have a sense that schools should be decision makers, but it shouldn't be just an autocracy of the principal. It should be built on a really strong community leadership kind of model. And so as we do school redesign and we push folks through that, we talk a lot about building good, strong leadership capacity and principles to engage parents, to engage teachers, and to really distribute leadership. So that's a strong part of our model. And then we see the role of the district is really to be a support model, to provide professional development that a principal and a team thinks they need for themselves, to give some frameworks and some guidelines. We call these 5 tenets our guardrails. And so we want every school to speak to these guardrails, but they can do it in really different ways.
When we first started this conversation several years back, I think there was maybe a misunderstanding of what personalized learning meant out in the world, and we wanted to clarify that for the sake of our own district. We are specifically interested in advancing student agency because we think ensuring that students are able learners, reflective learners, flexible, adaptive learners, that will enable them to learn whatever it is they need to learn when they leave us. So the premise of our entire shift toward personalized learning is ensuring that students have agency to make substantive decisions over their own learning experience. Having said that, we think that the student learning experience should be characterized or should include these 5 pillars that you see of the Parthenon. So first of all, we believe that every student should be known well to themselves, to their parents, to their teachers, to school personnel. That students should be, the whole child should be known well. So one of the things that we did at the outset of this work was to begin building a learner profile platform that houses lots of information on students that reflects who they are as a whole person. Our learner profile includes some information that is historical about students, so past grades, test scores, that kind of thing. But really more important than that, the learner profile is a place that houses an individual personalized learning plan for every student, and that is co-created between students and their teachers and their parents. That looks, practically speaking, a lot like goal setting, short-term, long-term goal setting, academic goal setting, social, behavioral, lots of goal setting going on as an important part of personalized learning in the district. And that all lives in an online platform that the district is custom building that is available to right now every student in the district, every employee in the district. And so every kid has their own learner profile. So in addition to having a personalized learning plan in the learner profile, every student has portfolio space that students can upload artifacts of their learning and tag it to our district competencies. And then also it connects to a feedback loop, a workflow that we've built to make sure that students are getting good quality feedback. Learner profile, first of all, every student should be known well if their experience is going to be personalized.
So the second thing we believe in really deeply is that learning needs to be competency-based, that it's not about marching kids through particular learning experiences, but it's about them having the ability to demonstrate mastery through evidence of their learning. And so that frees you from the idea of Carnegie units, and it frees you from the idea of having time being constant, and really makes us think about making learning constant. We are in partnership with the Great Schools Partnership out of Maine, and have really kind of used a lot of their guidance to help us develop that out. We're not 100% down the road with what that looks like. We have a task force that's doing policy work around how we will change our diplomas to a proficiency or competency-based diploma. But we are well down the road of changing some practice in a number of our launch schools to really be thinking about how do you flexibly attack the idea of making learning constant. And so that's a big lift, but we believe that it's the glue that really holds all of this work together. If you're going to change the student and school experience and not have it be built around master schedules and time, then it has to be held cohesively together by something else. We also think that it's about equity. If we recognize kids are coming to us in different places, if we say the end is what's equitable, not the common time or experiences, then we can help balance equity for kids. And then that connects really closely to our third pillar, which is authentic learning. We really think that the idea of coming to school to get knowledge is not the way that school needs to operate anymore. It's really about kids learning how to use knowledge and how to use it effectively. And so that has to look like project-based learning or service learning or performance tasks, but work that kids can actually work on and get better at. And that has access to and is evaluated by a wider community than just their teacher. That it also includes the community and other folks engaged in that authentic learning experience for kids. That also includes for us capstone experiences where kids will stand up and say, I'm ready to move to high school from 8th grade, and here's my evidence that says I'm ready. Not just you marched through the classes and got, an average that we think is good enough, and then you moved on. So all of those are kind of wrapped together in those two tenets.
One question I wanted to follow up on is one of the notions you hit upon with competency-based is the absence of time in terms of Carnegie units and things like that. How are you structuring? Are there some schools that have completely went full tilt competency-based? I mean, what does that look like when we talk about absence of time?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. We don't have schools that are 100% there yet. That's part of what that task force is doing, is coming up with what those practices and policies need to be. However, we do have a virtual blended learning school we call Impact Academy that has a lot of face-to-face time for kids, but also allows kids to come to school 2 days a week. And they have extended semesters and given kids time to move through the content at a pace that works for them. We do have a lot of things worked out for kids who are accelerated. So we have middle school kids taking high school courses and elementary kids taking middle school courses, finishing them partway through the year and moving forward. Our current answer to those one-off kids is offering that Impact Academy through the virtual learning models. If the schools can't work it out within their own schools to move kids on when they're moving forward. So we have kids who are doing it, and we're able to do it through that district option. One of the things we do with that district option is schools retain their enrollment in their home school, and they can have a total mix of what their class schedule looks like. So they can be taking 3 classes. Maybe they're taking math and social studies online. They could be taking on grade level at the brick and mortar school, their home school, those courses, and then still taking electives or participating on the football team, or they can go all virtual and then just go back for football games or whatever. So we've created across the district for middle and high school a lot of flexibility in the interim as we work out what the traditional school policies need to look like. So we have a space for kids to live in that, and they are leading the way for us to think about it. But really, it becomes defining what is evidence of completing a course, and then the time becomes flexible. The other thing we do in the school redesign process, which Karen will talk about in a minute, is we ask schools to create spaces where kids who are in different places can function. So it's not about every kid being assigned to a teacher for X amount of time during the day, but rather a teacher who's responsible for the coursework, but not necessarily having that kid sit there the whole time. So it requires a lot of flexibility, and there's no one clean answer. That's the part that is both exciting and scary. Is it really requires schools to say, let's figure out what this kid needs and make a plan that works for that kid, and then replicating that over and over again. You find common patterns in that, but it's really about being willing to say, this is what needs to work and what doesn't. So we've had as a district to say, attendance, how do we define what attendance is and how important is that? So at Impact, we don't have an attendance requirement. They don't have to click in X amount of times. We count attendance for them by whether they're completing work or not. And so it's just a matter of saying what are the things that you value and how do you articulate what those things are. So that's where we are in the process right now.
Aaron, is when you mentioned about no attendance, is that something that Georgia has worked with in terms of seek funding and attendance requirements? Is that something they've kind of allowed you guys some room for things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have what's called a strategic waiver here in Georgia that allows us to waive all of the state board policies and any state laws that we don't like, as long as they don't impact the health and safety of kids.
What did you call that again? Yeah.
It's called a strategic waiver, and in fact, every district in Georgia was required to apply for one of three things: either a charter district provision, a strategic waiver, or they could stay status quo. Of the 182 districts, there are 2 that remain status quo. All the others either have that strategic waiver, and it's really a push by the state board and the state legislature to believe in local control. And so they've really given over all of those requirements to the districts and said, you guys are the arbiters of what you think is good or bad. So it's a little bit of a wild, wild west because some districts are better at figuring out what they think than others, but it creates a lot of opportunity for us. So we have a seat time waiver. We have a waiver from just about everything that is a requirement. The other nice thing that's there is any of the categorical money that we earn through FTE, where in the past you get X percentage for professional learning and X percentage for remediation programs and whatever. We don't have to follow those models anymore, but we can still earn the money. So it's a little dicey because for gifted, for example, it used to be really important that on FTE day that all your gifted segments lined up with being a teacher of a gifted classroom and having all of that. And so in elementary, that was always dicey for us as a model. Now we just have to have the kids enrolled in a gifted class and be able to give an assurance that they're getting gifted services. It doesn't have to match the schedule in the FTE package that we send up. So the FTE calculation hasn't caught up with the waivers. So we play a game where our master schedules look like what they need to look like to earn money, but on the ground it doesn't look like that at all. So we've had to come up with some workarounds for that, but it's liberating even if it's a little dicey.
When we first started this, we knew that we wanted to be clear that it is important for students to know more than just content. We wanted students to have those skills and dispositions that made them good lifelong learners and able to learn whatever they need to learn for when they leave us. So we landed on focusing on the 4 C's that you see there: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking, which we borrowed from p21.org work on the 4 C's. There's been lots of good thinking and work around the 4 C's and commitment to the 4 C's. We knew those things were important to us, and what we later learned was actually those are cross-curricular competencies. So we have since the beginning really kind of incorporated them into our competency work. So the statement is, before you leave Henry County Schools, not only are you going to have to know the content that's been identified in our content competencies, but you're also going to have to demonstrate mastery of these 4 C's. This is super exciting to our business community. This is exciting to teachers and parents because these are the things that ensure that you're a lifelong learner and that you can collaborate with other people and then creatively solve problems. And is a strong statement that our district is about more than just content acquisition. So the 4 C's are treated as competencies like the rest. So when students upload artifacts to their portfolios, they can tag these 4 C's just like the other competencies as well. Um, Practically speaking, the capstone work that Aaron mentioned will align with our 4 Cs. We have lots of good conversation going on now about what does it look like for a fifth grader to demonstrate mastery of being an effective collaborator, for example, and that will, practically speaking, look like a portfolio of work from students. So we're definitely excited about that part of it, and the bold statement from our district that you're going to have to prove that you can do those 4 things before you graduate from Henry County schools.
Okay, and then one last follow question on your first segment was capstone work. Is that senior level capstone or?
So mostly the capstone work is interesting to high schools right now, but there's certainly, so when our schools redesign, each school writes a plan for how they want to operationalize those 5 tenets, and even elementary schools are talking about building in a version of capstone work. I would say that our schools, none of them are really fully operational on that yet, but they have it as part of their 4-year rollout plan. And it was particularly interesting at gateway grades. So 5th grade before you move into middle school, and then 8th grade before you move into high school. And so all of their levels are looking at it, but I would say elementary and middle schools are a little ways off from actually making that happen for 5th graders and 8th graders.
Yeah, and part of what our task force is doing is also working on separating out that competency-based learning reporting tool so that we'll have a K2 kind of 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12, and so we'll also be adding a K2 kind of capstone experience of some sort for moving from 2nd to 3rd grade, so still working on what that would look like. But what we've seen through student-led conferencing, and that's a big part of our learner profile as well, that sometimes we skip over. We have a student-led conferencing kind of tool in there. Kids are able to talk about what they're doing and doing well, and so it's just a matter of giving them the opportunity to do that and coaching them up on what's important.
It's interesting. We've seen that happen at other schools, Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School, for example. Sometimes it's not a fully blown capstone project for kids, but kids can stand up and kind of defend their promotion at the end of the year by presenting their portfolio of work. I think our early runs at capstone will look more like that at first, but then we also have kids who are engaged in long-term projects that they can stand up and present. We have lots of schools, even down to elementary level, where students are doing authentic learning experiences and presenting that out to authentic audiences, real experts from the field and all of that. I think all of that is foundation for longer term individual capstone work for kids.